A masterclass of deception leads to an unplanned title match, but does it pay off in the end? Just keep watching. Let's just keep it real, no one can keep up with Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman, so we'll get to that in a minute, but we'll start off the top and just keep having a destructive Cinco de Mayo as Penta fends off attacks from all angles to land a Mexican destroyer to beat JD McDonagh. So Penta is the ones, and he had a few of his big moves with a handstand kick, a sling blade, and a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker, but he mostly found a way to fend off multiple sneak attacks, first with Balor distracting the ref that allowed Carlito to grab him from the apron, only then for Penta to hit a step-up enziguri and then a crossbody off of the top rope. So Balor then yanked his leg off of the apron, but he got a little bit sloppy there when he threw him into the ring. The ref saw it all, so he rejected both Judgment Day members, and that led to Chad Gable taking out Penta's legs from the top rope, but Penta countered that too with a tope con hilo. So then McDonagh missed a moonsault, which allowed Penta to finish this off with a Mexican destroyer, so he goes to 7-2-1 in one-on-one matches, and he will face Dominic Mysterio for the IC title at Backlash. But with all of these shenanigans, we have to give Balor and Carlito 1 week suspensions, and then also Chad Gable will get a fine. We'll also note here that after the match, AJ Styles went into the Judgment Day's clubhouse, and he stumbled and bumbled about, but eventually he said that he's coming for whoever wins the IC title match at Backlash. And then after he left, Dom suggested that Balor take care of Styles, so while Balor initially yelled at him, he then quickly changed his tune and agreed to that match, so we'll see that next week on Raw. But since Styles should retire in the ring, and apparently he should also just stop talking, we have to give Styles a double not okay. But back to the match, we had McDonagh land a nice Death Valley driver on the apron, and he also had a standing Spanish fly during the commercial break. But this was his first singles match since August, and while we might consider it rust that he couldn't win despite having 3 people helping him here, well, he wasn't doing much winning anyways, as he was 1-5 in one-on-one matches last year, and he's now 0-1 this year. Well, you hate to see so much interference, but Penta overcame all the odds and locked in himself a title match against Dom, so we'll give this an okay. Next, we just keep walling off your partner as Grayson Waller cowardly passes a match off to Austin Theory and then doesn't help him at all during it, so Theory gets hit with the 10 beats and a brogue kick. So Sheamus is the ones, and even though this was his first appearance since the Royal Rumble, he still had both members of A-Town Down Under shaking in their boots, and for good reason, as he had 2 Irish Curse backbreakers and a kneecap that stopped a rolling blockbuster, and he made this one look pretty easy, so he goes to 2-1 in one-on-one matches, and in fact, he's 10-4 in all non-title one-on-one matches since returning last April. But of course, you know just how badly those title matches have gone. But Theory is the 2s, and Waller successfully passed this match along to Theory backstage, getting Theory to agree to a match while leaving his opponent a surprise. And then Waller seemed to want no part of Sheamus or helping his tag team partner, but Theory at least connected with a super kick and a rolling blockbuster combo, but he was still no real threat here, and he's lost 6 straight one-on-one matches and is 0-2 in 2025. Well, something was just off here the whole way around, with Waller not up to his usual tricks, and admittedly those tricks never seem to work anyways, but Theory just didn't have it without any scouting of his opponent. And even though we will say welcome back to Sheamus, this still gets a double not okay. Third, we just keep going on a roll as Io Sky and Roxanne Perez trade about 20 different pinning combos in one big sequence until Io finally traps Roxanne for the win. So Io is the ones, and she had a nice deep arm drag off of the middle rope and also a backbreaker. But this one was more about what she avoided, as she stopped a copter Hurricane Rana with a cartwheel and then stopped the Pop Rocks with a handstand. So in the end, she just had one too many pinning tricks up her sleeve as she goes to 3 1-1 in one-on-one matches. And Roxanne is the 2s, and she worked on Io's right knee throughout this one, which at least slowed her down a few times, and she reversed a second German suplex into an Olympic slam. But in the end, she was the rookie here, so she drops to 1-3 in one-on-one matches. Well, it appeared that Roxanne was showing sportsmanship for a change, but it was only a trick because after Roxanne left the ring, Julia blindsided Io and both beat her down, only to have Julia hold Io up so Roxanne could land 2 different super kicks right to her head, so both of them will get fines. Well, I do feel like there's a better match in here somewhere between these two, and I'm sure we'll probably get it with so few women showing up on Raw, but for tonight, this is just a not okay. Fourth, we just keep yearning for Rusev Day, as this new Rusev is much more serious, but not that much more effective. But he was still good enough to beat Otis with a Machka kick and an accolade. So Rusev is the ones, and for a man claiming to have worked on himself for 5 long years, well, he didn't run through Otis nearly as easily as we all probably would have expected, as these two had a long collar and elbow tie-up to start the match, and just a general stalemate in testing each other's strength for several minutes before he finally gained the upper hand with a spinning heel kick. But he did get the final say here, so this was his first win since beating No Way Jose on December 16th, 2019, so he is 1-0. But Otis is the 2s, and he's actually had a couple pretty good efforts against Gunther and now Rusev, and he had an overhead suplex over the announce table, but in the end, he drops to 0-2 in one-on-one matches. Well, Rusev held onto that accolade a bit too long for Tozawa's liking, so he challenged Rusev by ripping off his shirt. But Rusev didn't think that was worth his time, so he walked away, only then to turn back around and slam Tozawa onto Otis. Then he threw Otis into 2 different ring posts and another Machka kick and another accolade that forced several officials to have to try to rip him off of Otis, so we will give Rusev a fine here. But Otis was just good enough to make Rusev seem more underwhelming than expected, but was also not good enough to really pose a threat here. So I guess in the end we long for the days of Rusev and Lashley fighting over Lana, wherever she may be, but for tonight, this is double not okay. And in our main event, we just keep turning one good punking into 2, because just when all of Rollins' plans were coming to fruition following a stomp on Jey Uso, CM Punk took care of Braun Breaker and then Rollins with a steel chair to force a DQ. So Seth Rollins is the ones, and we saw his master plan in action with Paul Heyman spitting straight fire at Jey Uso off the top of the show, saying that CM Punk put him in position to guarantee that he'd sabotage his relationship with Roman Reigns. But speaking of that loser, Heyman found a stray big dog on the island of irrelevancy and turned him into the tribal chief, saying that Heyman was not the one that blew it by losing to Rhodes by being distracted by Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 40, and Heyman said that he spent 5 years of his life building up Reigns as a champion, and then once he lost, he disappeared and left him in the hands of the new bloodline, who then put him through a table. And then when Reigns finally got off of that couch, he did not come back to avenge Heyman. Instead, he came back to get the Ula Fala. So he ended up yelling at Jey, saying that he's right this time. And you know what? He is right. This is pretty much exactly what I've been saying for the last 9 months. So yeah, Paul, good job, buddy. You got this one right. You are not at fault here at all in any stretch of the imagination. And since Heyman had to be the wise man for Reigns, he also had to scheme for Reigns to win every single match, as Reigns is currently on a streak of 13 straight singles matches where he needed outside help to even try to win, and he has not won all of those matches. And of course, even with Heyman, the final boss, Solo Sikoa, and Jimmy Uso Reigns could still not beat Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 40, and instead, Reigns took food off of the table, costing Sikoa the championship at SummerSlam, and then having the Usos interfere to cost the New Bloodline the tag titles. So no, Jey, you will not be lecturing Paul Heyman about betraying Roman Reigns, because Heyman did no such thing. It was Reigns who betrayed Heyman over the last year. But Heyman then manipulated Jey by saying that Rollins has to have the power and control as the World Heavyweight Champion. So he said that Rollins challenges Jey because, of course, beating Reigns and Punk certainly earns him the right to be the #1 contender. But Paul said he would do Jey a favor by saying that Jey could name any time and any place for this championship match. So of course, Jey agreed to do it tonight, falling right into Heyman's trap, which of course will get Paul by himself a double okay. But we did have a match here, and just like at WrestleMania, Rollins stopped 2 spears, first with a simple kick and the second with an incredible leaping pedigree. And after Jey headbutted Rollins off of the top rope, Rollins accidentally bumped into the ref, so Breakker took advantage and grabbed Jey's leg, so that will cause Breakker to get a fine here. But Rollins saw an opening and got a superplex and then a stomp, but it was not a very good one, only getting a piece of Jey's head, so Jey was still able to kick out. Then Sami Zayn came on out of the crowd and took out Breakker, momentarily at least, so Jey took advantage with a super kick, a spear, and an Uso splash, but despite landing all of his best shots, that was not enough to pin Seth Rollins. But with both men down, Breakker then speared Zayn at ringside, so Jey checked on Zayn, and then Heyman distracted the ref, so Breakker then speared Jey. So Breakker threw him back into the ring for a stomp, but just when Rollins was about to go for the cover, CM Punk showed up and took out Breakker with a chair shot to the head, and then hit Rollins 3 times with the chair, and then Breakker 3 more times with the chair, so they both scattered the ring and left Rollins with a win. But it was a DQ win, so of course the champion's advantage applies, and he does not win the title. So while Punk does get a 1-week suspension for this interference, Rollins at least improves to 4-1 in one-on-one matches. So Jey is the 2s, and he did avoid a stomp, but after failing to lock in a sleeper, he was at least able to hit 1 spear. But none of it matters here because he takes a loss and drops the 4-2 in one-on-one matches, but most importantly, he does escape with the title. I have to say, Omaha is obviously not very smart, because they gave a "this is awesome" chant after a double crossbody, and despite nearly nothing happening for the first 9.5 minutes of this match. But of course, no one wants to see Punk interfere in another title match either, so this has to get a not okay. And with that, let's go beyond the mat for Raw, and we'll actually say we got 5 matches tonight, so I guess that's something, but this makes this segment a little shorter. So the New Day found Chad Gable backstage after he failed to help McDonagh beat Penta. But the New Day said that they thought that American Made should be in line for a title shot instead of the War Raiders, which of course Gable liked, so we ended up with a match for next week between American Made and the War Raiders. So I guess that gets an okay. Becky Lynch came to the ring and she was confused why people think that she now sucks, saying that she is the victim here, and she took out the garbage, which is Bayley, which she decided to repeat over and over about 100 times, and then she called Lyra recycling. So of course Lyra interrupted, saying that Becky is the queen of recycling because she's had the same act for years, which, come on Lyra, that act for years helps Becky keep to winning matches and titles, so I think that's a pretty good act. Anyways, Lyra continued by saying that everyone got better while Becky was gone, and Becky agreed that everyone got better only because she was not there to beat them. Regardless, Lyra then said Becky hates that Lyra is the first women's IC title holder, so that did indeed upset Becky, and she swung at Lyra, but Lyra blocked and took her down and threw Becky into the barricade 2 times, so officials stepped in to break things up. which was temporary because Becky got away and grabbed the mic back in the ring, so Lyra then managed to get away again, and they started swinging again, and Lyra got the final laugh because she countered a manhandle slam with a Nightwing, but Becky is the one that gets the fine here despite laying in the middle of the ring at the end because she instigated all of this. But this does improve the outlook for the match on Saturday, so we'll give this an okay. Pat McAfee and Gunther met face to face in advance of their meeting at Backlash on Saturday, and McAfee said that Michael Cole has earned the right to have an opinion, but McAfee's opinion was that no one beats this town's meat. Okay. And that this version of Gunther is soft. So I'm not sure if McAfee was actually thinking about the match or thinking about something else. But then Gunther said that this got him in the right mood and promised that McAfee will have his full and undivided attention. Oof, okay, settle down here, big guy. This is heating up into a weird place, no? Anyways, maybe they meant the match? I don't know, I think they might have meant something else. But let's try to talk about the match. As Gunther said that he's going to maul McAfee and choke him out until he drops like a wet towel. And I mean, that was probably just an allegory to something else, wasn't it? But no matter what these guys want to do behind the scenes, that is not my business. But for tonight, it's also not okay. Well, that got real weird real fast there, didn't it? And it was also weird that we actually got 5 matches tonight, but if you missed all of my grades for all 6 matches from SmackDown and all the other segments, be sure to go right on over here and check those out, because if you don't, just like having a plan come perfectly into place, only to get punked out, that would be double not okay.